Good afternoon, stampers and paper crafters. Welcome to my Facebook Live Wednesday afternoon, October 28th. I think when I was here a week ago, I was saying we'd had a taste of winter. Well, it looks like fall has come back. It's beautiful, sunny. The snow that we had has all melted. And it's actually kind of warm. And yesterday was very windy, but today is not. So it's pretty awesome. So just waiting a minute here for people to pop on and I can watch their comments. I have been sharing projects with the Poinsettia Petals Suite over the last several weeks, and today is going to be my last one. Okay, well, hopefully people jump on. Anyway, my name is Sheila Keith. I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator in Parkland County, Alberta, which is a rural community just outside the capital city of Edmonton, about half an hour west. Having, like many, had to change my business to an online platform with COVID-19 and the numbers growing like crazy, particularly in our region. And so I have taken to doing these Facebook Lives. I really do appreciate you watching and following. I would really appreciate if you comment and share. You may have to let me know you've shared because of your privacy settings. And all of those that do share, either here or on my YouTube channel, which I will upload this video to YouTube later. And remember, I'm in a real community, so internet's not my friend sometimes, so it takes me a little while. But yes, I will enter everybody that comments and shares into a draw for a small prize from me. So what I want to tell you today, this, as I said, this is my last card from my bundle, Sweet Focus, the Poinsettia Petals Place Suite. Here I go again. And today I have a holiday card for you in non-traditional colors, featuring the Poinsettia Petals Bundle, as well as the plush poinsettia specialty paper. I am also using a watercolor wash technique to create the background. So I would like us to get started here. Let's see if I can turn you around, down and around. Not make you dizzy, sorry. Oh, my mount is not cooperating with me here today. There we go. And I don't know, I'm not getting a notification that I'm live, so I'm not really sure if I am live. I hope I am. It looks like I'm live. Okay, just bear with me while I make sure everything's in screen and in focus here, so that I'm not demonstrating something off on another quadrant where you're not able to see what I'm doing. Okay, that looks pretty good. A little off center. I can maybe move this down. No, I think I have to move it the other way. No, move it down a little bit. Okay, so anyway, here's the card we're going to make today. And as I said, this is a non-traditional color, so you'll see that it's blues and purples. But I am using all the elements from, or not all of the elements, but several of the elements from the Poinsettia Petals Bundle. So first let's get to the background. So let's just move this out of the way because we're going to get a little messy here. And I'm going to start with a piece of watercolor paper. So this is the Fluid 100 watercolor paper that we sell in our catalog. And I've got a clear block here, and I've got a water painter here. Sorry, those are my notes, because I'll forget something. So I have chosen the one that has the wide brush on it, and it's nice and wet for me. So the first thing that you want to do, I always get ahead of myself here. So I have ink refills here. I have Highland Heather and Balmy Blue. So I'm going to put a couple of drops of each of these on my clear block. I'll just throw it across the table, that's fun. You can always add more if you need more. And then I'm going to squeeze water so that there's lots of water in my brush, and I'm going to make sure that this piece of watercolor paper, and by the way, this paper measures 3 3/4 by 5, is nice and wet. And then I'm going to add a couple of drops of water to each color of ink, and then you can start to pick some up, and you can make it as intense as you want, and just wash it across the cardstock. And if it gets a little too dark for your liking, and it doesn't necessarily have to go back and forth, it can go in a different direction. And then clean your brush out, and then do the same thing with the next ink color that you've chosen. And I always like to start off so I don't get that big glob of color where I set my painter down. And I'm just going to overlap these colors a little bit and make sure that, in this case, I don't want any white space left. And if you get a spot where there's just too much color, then you can just wet it down. Okay? Now, probably the biggest downside of this whole technique is that, of course, now it's wet, and I made it wet, and I'm adding a little more water, so I'm making it wetter, is that it needs time to dry. So I'm just going to set this aside, and actually I'm going to get rid of this piece of paper, or at least fold it in half, because it's very wet and yucky. Actually, let's just get rid of it. I'm bringing the dry one. It's always good to have some paper towel or something on hand. So with the miracle of time-lapse photography, without time-lapsing photography, here's one that I did earlier. So no two cards are ever going to look exactly the same, but I've got the mixture of the Highland Heather and the Balmy Blue. So the next thing that we need to do is take a piece of, where is it? There we go. I'm going to bring in, this is my mat from my Stamparatus. This is the deluxe foam mat. I like to use this when I'm stamping with photopolymer stamps, and I have a piece of, what size is this? Sorry, this is, I think it's 3 1/4 by 5 piece of vellum, and I'm going to take my embossing buddy and make sure I go over that and get rid of all of the static. And then with Versamark, I'm going to stamp the largest and the next size down in the Poinsettia Petals images from the Poinsettia Petals stamp set. And you should be able to get both of those on that piece of paper. And it's nice to have that foam underneath when you're stamping with photopolymer stamps, because you've lost the little foam cushion that you have with the red rubber stamps. Have that foam cushion. And I can see where I've stamped, so I can angle that. And then I'm going to emboss that with white embossing powder. Make sure I've got all the excess off. And I also like to use a pair of these reverse tweezers to hold something when it's that close. so I don't burn my fingers. So just bear with me a moment while we heat emboss this. So when you're embossing white, it turns bright and shiny from the dull, almost off-white color it is when you first put it on. Now, I have an old heat tool here. If you have one of the newer ones, when you are embossing on vellum, you use the first setting. These old ones only have one setting, and it's the one I keep in my studio. It's not the one that I typically use in my classes. I do have a newer one. And just let that cool down for a moment, and then you would take it over to your Stampin' Cut emboss machine and cut them out. Now when they're cut out, so you're going to use the coordinating dies. Let's just take this out of the way. They'll look like this. So this is shiny side up, so that's finished side. Now what we're going to do is we're going to color on the back of them. Now I've used Stampin' Blends. I've done this technique before in the past using markers, which takes a bit of time to dry. And it takes time to dry also with the alcohol markers because the vellum really doesn't absorb the color or the ink at all. But what I'm going to do, I'll start with the smallest one, is just towards the top. Now make sure when you add your color, doesn't matter if you overcolor the lines, but make sure you stay inside the border because you don't want to have color running outside. I'm going to add a little bit of, and I'm using the dark because it doesn't show through, the light colors don't show through because of the opacity of the vellum. And then I'm going to add some Balmy Blue. Now the Balmy Blue is quite light on here. You could maybe even use a different color, although this is the color of ink I use, so I wanted to try and keep my colors in the same family, the same hue. And I'm not going right, I'm going very close to, but not all the way into the Highland Heather at this point, because I'm just trying to add layers of color. And go back and add another layer. And it gets a little darker each time you go over it. And you can even let that dry a little bit in between, although the alcohol does dry fairly quickly. And then next time I go over, so I'm adding more, but now I'm going to start to go into the Highland Heather and blend those two colors a little bit. And you might want to clear it off your marker and come back and blend a little more. And then you go back to the next petal, adding more Balmy Blue, and then start to drag the Highland Heather down. I want to soften that line between the two colors and blend them, because after all, these are Stampin' Blends. But each time you do go into the Highland Heather, you want to clear off the tip of your marker just on your paper so that you don't carry that into the next, because your next project may have nothing to do with this one and you might not want purple on your Balmy Blue that you're painting. Oops, did that the wrong way. Pay attention. It's pretty easy to mess it up. And then just set it aside. I'm not going to go through and do both of these because this too, like the background, takes a little time to dry. So I'm just going to pick this up with my tweezers and set it aside. And when you're done, you have something that looks like this. So what I did to make this card, so I have an 8.5 by 5.5 Whisper White card base, scored at 4 1/4. And I'm just going to burnish that fold really nicely. And then I have my watercolor background that's dried quite nicely. And I'm going to adhere that to a mat that is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. Just a really tiny, like 1/16 of an inch border all the way around there. And then I'm going to adhere that to my card base. A little bit bigger, 1/4 inch border or so all around. And then I have a 3 by 3 piece of the plush, what do they call this again? Plush. Sorry. I can't remember, sorry. It's plush specialty paper, but there's plush poinsettia specialty paper, I believe is what it is. Now it's got like a velvet finish and it's on a vellum. So what I like to do when I adhere vellum is I like to use a little bit of multi-purpose glue. Now you can take a water painter if you like, or you can just take the water and get your finger wet. So I'm just going to put a bit of water on my finger and spread that around. Always a good idea to have a baby wipe handy because this is kind of messy. I'm going to pick it up with my tweezers. Make sure there's no adhesive there and then I'm just going to glue that down sort of centered towards the top and side to side. So it's not centered in my card, but it is centered pretty much side to side and the top being the same. And then and I don't know if it's me, but these seem like they screw backwards. And I made a mess. I had it upside down. Okay, so let's just kind of move this paper over a little bit here where we haven't got quite so much of a mess going on. Now, next thing that we want to do is adhere our beautifully colored poinsettia leaves. So first thing we're going to do is just put a spot of multi-purpose glue, oh that's probably too big, on the center of the biggest set of petals, and I'm just going to adhere that and let it set for a moment. And while that is setting, I don't think you need to watch me do this. I have a piece of 3 3/4 by 3/4 of an inch Whisper White cardstock, and I stamped the Merry Christmas greeting from the Poinsettia Petals stamp set and heat embossed it with silver. And then I have brought in this punch from the annual catalog. I think it's take your pick, tag, punch, something like that. I can never remember. So you've got 2 different styles and 3 different sizes for each. So 1 inch, 3/4, and a 1/2 inch. And it's really important when you are punching this to make sure, and I'm using this one here, that you get it right in that groove. And then it will be straight and you should get nice even punching. Very important to make sure you've cut your sizes accurately so that it doesn't wobble. But if you keep it in those guides, you should be pretty safe. Whoops. Then I've taken a piece that is 4 inches by 1 inch in Night of Navy, and then I'm also going to punch it so that's like the next bigger size. And I'm going to punch both of those ends. And I'm just going to glue this on flat. Like that. Now this should be dry enough by now. So I'm just going to turn that over, and I'm going to put a couple of stamped dimensionals on the back of that. Now this is to adhere it to my card, but I'm also going to use it to adhere two of the sprigs that I'll pre-cut out of the dies that come with the Poinsettia Petals Bundle. I'm just going to kind of lay those down where I think I want them for now, and then I think I need to bring them a little closer than that, and then just kind of lay, because the poinsettias are actually going to be a little off center, that the whole image of the sprigs and the poinsettia are more centered. I'll try and bring those a little together. Let's pull the backing off here. And then trying to get those sprigs to come out, not at the tip of a petal. And I'm just using those dimensionals to hold those sprigs down, and if I pull on those, yeah, they're pretty secure. Now in the center, I have also pre-cut this little center that is also part of the dies that come with this bundle. And I'm just going to put the tiniest amount of adhesive on there so I don't get a big mess. And I'll use my tweezers, and I'm just going to put that in the middle. And while that is drying, we'll take our greeting. That's a fairly long one, so I'm going to put 3 dimensionals on the back of that. And center that under my petals. Now, the only thing I have left to do to add a little bit of bling is to add a few rhinestones. Now, this is totally optional. You certainly do not need to do this if you don't want to. I did on my original, and I am going to do it on this one. I like to do these in 3s. So let's put one there, and let's put one up here, and how about one right there, and there you go. That is the card I have for you today. So let me bring in the original. I don't think it's too different. There's the one we did today, so the background's a little different. No two are ever going to be the same for sure. Lovely Labels Pick-a-Punch is what that's called. Yeah, and that's in the annual catalog. And you can see how the color is coming through from the back. The more color, it gets a little darker. The more purple you bring down, and you blend them nicely together there. I want to thank you for watching today, and if you comment and share this video, your name will be entered into win a small prize from me. You may need to message me that you shared, depending on your privacy settings. The details will be posted on my blog at parklandstamper.com. Probably not till tomorrow. I live in a rural community, so internet is not my friend, and so uploading videos is sometimes takes a little time. Just a reminder that October 30th is the deadline to purchase the Poinsettia Place Suite or an equivalent value of product from me. And by making that purchase, you will receive a kit from me with the materials you need to make 9 projects, a PDF, and with video links to create each one. Everything would be included in the kit except the stamped images. Also, please remember our DSP at 15% off select designer series paper ends October 31st at 11:30 p.m. You don't want to miss out on that. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Check out my blog on parklandstamper.com. Shoot me an email, sheilakeith@explorenet.com, if you have any questions on using the host code on the screen, and a purchase of the 128.75, I think it is, will get you the kit. Thanks so much for watching.